Hello. Oh, it is late on a Tuesday night. I'm about ready to go to bed, and I am going to give you my review of the movie. Not movie. I'm sorry. It's not a movie. It's a TV show. I don't know if it's a mini-series or there's going to be more seasons of it. I mean, you literally could have just wrapped it up in this one season, but I'm giving a review of the show Squid Game, the Korean show that has really taken the whole world by storm lately and become the most popular thing Netflix has ever produced. I read a while ago that it was on track to become the most watched show Netflix has ever aired, and so I'm assuming by now it has been. Oh, it's just one of these shows that got real popular, and I needed something to watch. So I said, "Fuck it, I'll give it a shot." And I got to admit, I get why people were so into it. It is a good show. It's like I said, it's a Korean show, so you can, if you're like me and do not speak fluent Korean, you can watch it either with a dubbing in English, which I don't do, not in live action. I'll do dubbing if it's like, say, a foreign cartoon, like anime or something, but I won't do dubbing in live action because it always looks off. It's impossible to not make it look off. The words in Korean are not the same as the words in English, so it's just gonna look wrong. So I just do subtitles. I'd rather just have the normal Korean and have to read it in English. How do I describe the show? Well, I've noticed that some comparisons have been made to it and the movie Parasite, which was a Korean movie that became popular a couple years ago, even won the Oscar for Best Picture, which when I eventually saw it, which was after it had won the Oscar, I was a little like, that was the Best Picture of the year? It wasn't a bad movie, it was just like, it wasn't as great as everybody made it seem. But I don't really see any comparisons between that movie, and this show, and other than it's a movie about that focuses a lot on economic disparity. Well, not really that focuses a lot on economic disparity, it's just that economic disparity is the root cause of all the problems here, and is obviously the two were making a commentary on that, and that they're both Korean. They're both Korean made, but that's not enough to make comparisons between the two. If I was going to make a comparison to any movie, and there's a lot of movies that deal with this subject. There's a lot of movies that deal with the subject of people being poor and desperate and then being brought into some fucked up shit by rich people who are going to take advantage of them. I mean, there's so many movies that are about that in some way or another. You could argue that, like, I think the Saw movie, no, not Saw, Hostel. The Hostel movies are kind of based on that. There's also one movie that kept coming to mind was a movie from years ago called Surviving the Game, which starred Ice-T. It's loosely based on, I think, a short story called The Most Dangerous Game, where a bunch of rich guys hunt a person just because they can, just because they're bored hunting everything else, so they decide to hunt a human being. And in the movie Surviving the Game, Ice-T plays a homeless guy. And it's all based, you get him in with money. Money can get everything. Though, oddly enough, the movie that I think I would compare this show to the most would be a movie called Battle Royale, which isn't a Korean movie, it's a Japanese movie, though I think it's based on a Korean book. And that's a movie about kids being taken against their will and put in a competition where they're forced to kill each other or die. But there's really no money involved. The only thing you win in that competition is your freedom. You get to be the last person left standing. Hence why it's called a battle royale. Good movie, by the way. But that's the closest I'd make the comparison here to a movie to this show. This show is very weird and very unique and very interesting in a lot of ways. Like I said, it's a Korean show, so it takes place in Korea. All the actors are Korean. All the characters are Korean. So you're about to listen to me fuck up some real names and some fake names, because I don't speak Korean and I am not going to pronounce these names well. First off, our main character is a guy named Seong Ji-hoon. Is that his name? Is that? Yep, Seong Ji-hoon. And he is played by actor Lee Jung-jae. Man, I hope I'm close to pronouncing these names right. Anyways, his character, Seong, is or maybe it's Ji-hoon. I think it's because Koreans are like Chinese people. Their family name, their family name comes first, and their actual individual names come last. So his name is Ji-hoon, and Seong is his family name. I think that's how it works in Korea. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Yeah, I'm right about that. Okay, so Ji-hoon he's this guy who is broke, as you would imagine. And he's broke kind of for his own it's his own damn fault. He's divorced. He has a kid with his ex-wife, who has since remarried and has a new family. Her husband is very much a accomplished guy. Ji-hoon he's struggling. He's got part-time jobs that don't pay anything. He lives with his mother. He also has a gambling problem, so you don't feel completely sympathetic for him because the guy wastes his fucking money. He's not a bad person. He's just kind of an idiot. And you get the story later on that he used to work at a factory once, and he worked there for years, and then he and everyone else just got laid off, and they were part of some big labor dispute there where they tried to keep their jobs and ended up getting attacked by the police, and a friend of his got killed, and so you start to develop sympathy for the guy, even though at first he seems like a major idiot. He's even owes people money, so he's got people looking for him. You also learn pretty early on that the South Korean economy must kind of suck, because their money does not seem worth shit. They're like spending it's called the won, and 10,000 won, they're like spending it like it's like $10. And then when you look at what the won is versus like the US dollar, it actually is kind of that, because I think like $1 US equals 0.00085 cents, or 85 won. So it's not even close to an equivalent of $1. It's like way off. So like, $1 billion so like a billion won would be worth like not even $1 million. It's just really bad. But you get that right away. So anyways, Ji-hoon is struggling. Then one night, after he's, feeling particularly bad, he gets approached by this guy. A guy who is referred to as the salesman, and he is played by actor Gong Yoo. The salesman asks Ji-hoon to play a game, just a simple game where they throw almost like this weird square thing at another square thing to see if they can flip it, and if he can do it, Ji-hoon will get I think it's he'll give him $1,000,000 or something like that, something crazy. It's just a decent amount of money, especially if you're broke. That's what they're betting, but Ji-hoon doesn't have $1,000,000 won, so the salesman says, okay, since you don't have the money, in exchange, every time I win, I'll hit you in the face. So he just slaps him, and he keeps winning, so he keeps slapping Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon finally wins. The salesman gives him money, and they go through this for a while. So eventually, after Ji-hoon finally wins one, the salesman gives him money, and then he gives him a card. This little card with 3 symbols on it. A circle, a triangle, and a square. And on the other side of the card is a number, which apparently is a real phone number that people have been calling because people are idiots. So Ji-hoon calls the number on the card, and agrees to participate in a competition to earn money. He then gets picked up in a minivan, and he sees that everyone else in the minivan is asleep except for the driver, who's wearing a weird gas mask. And when he gets in, all of a sudden gas starts spraying, and he falls asleep too. When he wakes up, he's in this weird room, almost like a barracks. It kind of looks like a gymnasium, but with a bunch of fucking stacked bunk beds all over the place, and everyone's wearing the same green jumpsuit, or not jumpsuit, tracksuit. Actually, it's a green tracksuit. And when he gets there, he, sees a few other people. He sees an old friend of his that he grew up with, named Cho Sang-woo, who's played by Park Hae-soo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right, especially the middle part. But Sang-woo is not like Ji-hoon in that he was very accomplished. He was a guy he's the kid who did good in the neighborhood, the really smart kid who went to university and graduated with really good grades and made something of himself. But he's here with all these other desperate people who need money, because apparently he got a job as a banker, as an investment banker, and then made some really bad investments, and then to try to solve those bad investments made even more bad investments, and now he owes a shit ton of money. Another person he meets there is this old man played by Oh Young-soo, whose name we don't get at first. We find out much later his name is Oh Il-nam. He's an old man with a brain tumor, so he comes off kind of confused and befuddled at points. 2 other people we see there, 2 other major characters we see there are Sae-byak, who's played by Jung Hoo-yeon, and she's a young pickpocket who actually robbed Ji-hoon earlier when he had won some money gambling on horse races. And she gets into a fight right away with this criminal who she used to work for, named Jang Deok-soo, played by Hyo Sang-tae. Oh my god, I know I'm fucking up these names. I'm so sorry. Deok-soo is a piece of shit, just career criminal who apparently got greedy and stole money from his boss and stole money from everyone he could, and now he's just got people after him. But we'll get to that later. All these people, they're part of a group of people. There's, I believe, 456 of them at first. There's 456 contestants in this thing. And basically they're being told that they will, in the room, they get approached by these weird guys in pink tracksuits who all have black masks but with different symbols. They have, and the symbols each correspond to what their responsibility and rank is in this place. Like, people with the circle symbols are just lowly workers. They do the busy work of the island. People with the triangle masks are soldiers. They're the ones with guns. People with the square masks are management. So they're the ones who are like running things. Now, the ultimate person running everything here is somebody who's referred to as the front man, and he wears this weird gray tracksuit, doesn't even describe it, just a weird gray costume. He has a gray mask that just looks like a face. But he runs everything from behind the scenes. He leaves everyone else to run things for him. Now, in this weird barracks that all the players are in, there's also a big plastic see-through piggy bank hanging from the ceiling. And that's where all the money that everyone will eventually win will end up in. See, as players get eliminated, every player is worth, I think, is worth 100 million won. So every player is worth 100 million won. So as players get eliminated, 100 million won gets deposited into the bank. So whoever wins at the end will earn everything based on however many people were eliminated. So already right away, it's very much a competition. Not only is it to beat everybody, it's that you want everybody out so you can earn off of their failure. And what they're told they're going to do is they're going to play 6 childhood games until there's a determined winner at the end who's won all 6 games. The first game they play is red light, green light. You know, the familiar game of where, somebody stands with their back and they go, they just go green light, and then they, will count in some way, and then go red light and turn around, and everybody has to stop moving. You have to stop moving. When they say red light and when they turn around and say red light, you have to stop moving. If you move after they say red light, you're out. It's the basics of the game. Now, the game is played with all the players on one side, and then on the other side is this weird animatronic woman standing in front of a tree. And she turns around and goes green light, and then she just starts saying green light, and then everybody runs, and then she turns around and goes red light. Now, everybody seems fine at first, and then I think on the second chime around, somebody accidentally moves after somebody gets too full of themselves, accidentally moves after she says red light, and a person gets shot. And when somebody realizes that the first person got shot, they try to run away, and then that person gets shot. And then that causes panic, and then a bunch more people get shot because there's snipers at the other end of the room. It looks like they're outside, but they're actually in a room that's painted to look like they're outside. And everybody's getting shot, and then people have to keep playing, and then as you see them keep trying to cross and stay still, people keep getting shot because this animatronic woman has a motion sensor, so she can detect even the slightest bit of motion, and that informs the gunman who to shoot. And so I think by the end of that first game, there's only like, I think it was like 204 people left, so over like 100 people died. So like over 200 people died in that first game. It cut things like more than in half. So obviously all the players are very much freaking out now. But when they came in, they signed an agreement of rules. And I think like the first rule was like they would agree to play all the game. I forget what the 3 rules are, but I remember that the third rule is, and this is very important, is that if a majority of them agree to stop the game will stop. So as long as they vote by majority to stop the game, this all stops and they all go home. But they go home empty-handed. So they vote, and by a margin of 1 vote, they agree to go home and they all get sent home. That's just the first episode. In the second episode, it's them going back to their lives and having to deal with everything. Ji-hoon still owes money, and he's, it gets even worse because he finds out his mother's sick. She has diabetes, and she can't. It's going to become unhealthy for her to work. So she might need surgery on her feet, or she might die, and he's trying to deal with that. He has to go to his ex-wife to try to beg for money, and she doesn't want to, and her ex-wife's husband does, but he wants him to take the money in agreement that he'll basically give up being a father to his daughter because they're moving to the United States, and he gets angry at that. Saibyak she's taking care of her brother who she has in an orphanage, and apparently she's from North Korea, and she snuck across the border with her brother. Their father died trying to sneak across, and their mother's still in North Korea, so she's trying to make money to get her mother across from North Korea, which I got to imagine is pretty hard. And so she's desperate there. Like I said, Deok-soo he's just a criminal who owes people a lot of money, and he's now being hunted by dangerous people. And Sang-woo is, he made a bunch of terrible decisions, and he owes a lot of money, and he's also the police are also looking for him. Oh yeah, and I completely forgot. There's actually a character in this show who is not Korean. He's, I don't know if he's Indian or Pakistani. He's playing Pakistani in the show, but he could be Indian or Pakistani. But his character's name is Abdul Ali, and he's played by Tripathi Anupam, and he's just this working class guy who came to Korea, to take care of his family, and but he's having a hard time finding work. He's working in a machine shop where his boss is not paying him and keeps saying he doesn't have the money, and but he knows everybody who works for him is so desperate they won't just leave the job on the hopes that they will eventually get paid. And he's having a lot of trouble trying to find money, and he kind of assaults his boss sort of by accident and then takes money from him, but he's owed money, but whatever. But basically they all realize that in going back to their fucking shitty lives, things are really bad. Ji-hoon actually tries to go to the police and report it, but they don't believe him, and this in turn gains the attention of a cop named Hwang Jun-ho, who played by Wee Hao-jun, who's looking for his missing brother. And while he's looking for his missing brother, he finds one of those cards and realizes it's the same card that Ji-hoon has. And so he tries to approach him about it, but Ji-hoon won't tell him anything. but Ji-hoon and all these other characters they all end up calling again and agreeing to go back. But now it's different because before when they weren't quite sure what they were getting into. Now they're going with their eyes wide open. They know what they're entering into. They know this is literally life or death. And as they go on, Junho is he's watching Ji-hoon, and he sneaks. He tails the van to where they're going, and then manages to sneak underneath one of the vans. The vans, there's a bunch of minivans that picked up people, and they all drove onto this big carrier barge. And when they're all checking, when all the drivers get out to check their passengers, Junho attacks the driver, subdues him, I guess kills him, and then takes his jumpsuit and mask and dumps him over the side of the boat. So now he's snuck into these group of workers. So now everybody's back. A few of the people start forming like little alliances. Like Saibyak sneaks in with a knife, and she manages to sneak into she works with another contestant named Han Mi Nyo, played by Kim Joo Ryung, and she helps her when they're both in the bathroom and they're trying to sneak in. Saibyak is like sneaking through like the ventilation system to see what's going on, and she sees them like cooking sugar, just these big vats of sugar. And Sang-woo, Abdul, and Ji-hoon, and Il-nam, they form like a little 4-man alliance at first, and Deok-soo is trying to find his own people as well. And you see that there's like this one guy who they give him like breakfast, they give him meals, and breakfast and dinner. And this one guy, during his breakfast meal, he gets like a little like note hidden in his breakfast that lets him know what the second game is. And you wonder like why that is. You'll find out why later. But the second game is a game called Honeycomb. They're basically led into a room that looks like a big jungle gym playground, and there's a bunch of shapes on the wall. Now, here's where we get a little hint about what kind of piece of shit Sang-woo is, because he hears Saibyak managed to see something she wasn't supposed to see. He asks her about it, and she tells him, yeah, they were cooking sugar. When he realizes that they were cooking sugar, he realizes what the second game is. He knows what it is. So when he sees the shapes on the wall, everyone asks him, like, well, what should we do? He says, well, we should all split up to a different shape, so that way we have all our bases covered. And he picks triangle. Now, the purpose of Honeycomb is they have these little pads of melted sugar that they then press a shape into, like almost like a stencil, and they wait for it to harden. Then what you have to do is you have to break all the pieces so only the shape is left. And if you break too much, if you break the shape, you lose. You're disqualified, which in this case means you get shot. So what they give them is they give them the little container full of the little sugar patty shape, and they give them a little needle to carve. Of course, it's not good enough to actually break through, but in this situation, going for the triangle, it's circle, triangle, star, and umbrella. Sang-woo goes for triangle. Abdul gets the circle. Ilnam gets the star, and Jihun gets the umbrella. So he has the hardest one. You see certain characters manage to do things like Minyo snuck in cigarettes and a lighter. So she actually uses the lighter on her needle while nobody's looking, so it can actually melt the sugar so she can carve her shape. And then she sneaks when she's done, she sneaks the lighter to Deoksu and helps him out. Everybody in Jihun's little group at first gets through, and he realizes that his sweat melts the sugar a little bit, and then he gets the idea to start licking the back of the patty, and that softens the sugar, so he can then start breaking through the outline part where it's even thinner, and that works, and he manages to survive. There's also like a big board on the wall that shows how many contestants there are left compared to how much money is gained. So it literally shows as people go down. After that first contest, this is where things get really bad, because Deoksu, he gets into a fight with one of the other contestants and manages to beat him to death. And they think there's going to be some response from the people running things for that, but there isn't. They just take the dead body, and then you see another 100 million gets added to the tally. So they now realize that if they just start killing each other, it can increase their odds of winning and gaining more money. So on that night after the second game, they all have to start really forming alliances, because all of a sudden they get attacked, and it becomes like a slaughterhouse where people just start attacking and trying to kill each other. Jihun and Abdul and Sangwoo and Ilnam, they form a little alliance, and they bring Saibyak into it. So now the 5 of them are together. Deoksu, he puts together a group of guys who are just like willing to fall under his thumb, and Minyao, he starts fucking her, and they sort of become a thing. Yeah, no. So they sort of become a thing. And then, now while this is going on, that cop, Junho, he's sneaking around, he's trying to find out evidence of where his brother is, and he's literally collecting evidence on his phone, records and everything, and he finds out that his brother was a contestant at one point who won the game. And, he actually, after the second game, manages to get his hand on a mask with the square face, so he can now sneak around his management. And you also find out after the second game that the reason one guy was given a heads up is because he's a doctor, and he's helping some of the workers and soldiers who are taking some of the people who aren't quite dead yet, or just so freshly dead, and they're harvesting their organs to sell them on the black market. And in exchange, they're helping the doctor basically survive and even win. The problem is, Junho, the first guy he took out, was a guy who was part of this little operation. And when he doesn't show up one night, it throws things into a bit of a tizzy for him, and it creates suspicions from the guys he's supposed to be working with. It's a little awkward. Eventually he, you know, gets brought into the fold, and then the doctor and gets into a fight with some of the other guys because they don't have information on what the next contest is, and he's afraid he's going to get killed because he's part of the alliance with Deok-su because he let him know that he knows what the contests are. And they eventually get caught by the front man and his guys, and he kills the workers and the doctor. The cop manages to sneak away, and he kills the other guy he's supposed to be sneaking the organs away with. And then he manages to sneak up to he finds out that there's like a secret escape room that leads from the very bottom of this island they're on. They're on a giant island, and he sneaks from the bottom of this island they're on all the way to the top where the front man's office is. So he sneaks up through there, and that's where he manages to find a bunch of information. Now, the front man by this point knows that he has somebody sneaking into his compound, and they even find the body of their dead guy, and the police officer left his badge on the dead man. So they find his badge, and they know who he is, and they know he's sneaking around there, and the front man is not happy about this, but he's trying to keep it as quiet as possible. After the night where a bunch of people slaughter each other, and they basically stop them at one point and just like, all right, that's enough. They're like, they actually like turn off the lights, and they have like a strobe flashing light to make things even more fucked up, and it turns out they didn't feed them enough to make them really angry. It's just, oh yeah, I remember what the fight was. Deok-su, he and his guys snuck back into line and took more food than they were supposed to be allotted, leaving like 5 people without any food, and one guy challenges him, and that's when Deok-su kills him, and that's how that happened. So, it's a pretty deadly night after the second contest. Next up is the third contest. Third contest is Tug of War. Now, Deok-su has a group of just a bunch of guys now, so they're in the first Tug of War contest, and they handily win it. Basically what it is, they're on these high, like, podium things, and they have to pull the rope. You know, it's Tug of War, but when you pull them far enough, the other team will come off their end because they're literally chained to the rope. So they'll just come right over the edge and start swinging down, and then the rope will be cut in half in this weird circle thing, and the other people will just fall to their death. So Deok-su's group handily wins that one. They had to have 10 people. They had to form groups of 10 before they actually enter the room to have the Tug of War. And Sang-woo says, he's like, we should, you know, he's not even knowing what the contest is. He's like, we should get men for this. He's like, we should get men. So he sends every person to go out. They have 5 people. He's like, go out and collect another person. Most of them manage to get another guy, although Sae-byeok gets another girl named Ji-young, played by Lee Yu-mi, who's just another young woman who's there. And I think they get Min-yo too. Yeah, I think Deok-su betrays her like right away, and she's not too happy about that. So they seem like they're not going. They seem like our group is not going to have a 10-person group that's tough enough to win, because the people they're going up are just another group of guys. But the old man, he says he knows how to play the game, that even if you're not strong enough, you can win it. And all that matters is that in the first few minutes, they just, like in the first minute, they just lean back and dig in their feet so they can't be moved. So the other people pull right away and then waste all their energy trying to pull when they can't pull against them. And then when the other group, like, you know, loses their strength in that moment, that's when they start pulling back. And it works at first until the other group regains their footing and starts pulling them back. And they're just like, well, what do we do now? And that's where Sang-woo has the idea, take 3 steps forward. So they take 3 steps forward, and the other group that's pulling back, when they now have all this slack in the line, it causes all of them to fall backwards. So that's when our group can now pull, just drag them straight off. So they're just dragging people straight to their death. It's pretty brutal. The next night, they kind of like barricade up their beds and everything, and they decide to take watch. To keep watch. So they agree that 2 people will stay awake during the night to make sure that, they don't get attacked. And, Deok-soo is convinced that maybe he can't completely trust his guys, and it's all just this very, animalistic shit of nobody knows who to trust, everybody's out for each other. It's very, very bad. Damn, this is taking a long time. So after that next night, I don't think anybody dies. Now we get to the 4th night. When we get to the 4th contest during the next day. In the 4th contest, basically everybody is asked to pair up with one other person. Now, the last time they asked to pair up in a group of 10s, it was so that they could work as a team. So everybody starts looking for another person. At first, Ji-hoon thinks he can team up with Sang-woo, but Sang-woo right away asks Abdul to be his partner. Okay? Because they're not sure if they're gonna need like another tough person. This could be another physical activity. And after what happened last time, they don't know what to do. Deok-soo just teams up with one of his guys. Sae-byeok teams up with that girl Ji-young, just because she's another girl around her age. I think at this point it was there was like a little over 40 people left, or something like that. So there's just 20 groups of 2, and yeah, it was like 41 because Min-yo gets left out and she's not sure what's going to happen to her. She just gets dragged away. So they get led into this weird room that just looks like a weird series of alleyways. But if they find out that the new contest is marbles, they're going to be playing marbles. So like, oh yeah, marbles, like I'm pretty good at marbles, yeah, me too. And they find out the contest is actually a really heartbreaking one, because the person that they're partnered with isn't someone they're going to be playing with, it's who they're going to be playing against. So everybody partnered up with the person they trusted most in this place, and now they have to compete against that person who, if they win, is going to end up dead. So it's a really rough thing. So basically the rules are they just have to play some kind of game with marbles. It can be any game they want, and they have to play it within the time frame. If nobody wins by the time frame, by the time is up, they both die. So Deok-soo almost loses his game against the guy he's playing against, but then they come up with another game that he manages to win. Sae-byeok and Ji-young don't really play a game. They just said, we'll just play a game where we'll bet everything based on one hand. Just go out like that. And they just spend most of the time talking to each other. And that's where you learn, like, Sae-byeok is like giving the details of like her life to Ji-young. And Ji-young reveals that her father was a really religious man who killed her mother, and then she killed her father, and she went to jail for it. And as soon as she came out of jail, she was offered to be in this contest. So she has no one to go back to. She really has nothing to play for. She seems kind of crazy almost. And Ji-young, or Ji-hoon, I'm sorry, is playing with the old man, and it's at the end of this contest you find out his name is OL Nam. The old man starts like freaking out a little bit. Like during the night, he actually like pissed his pants, and you can see he's like his health is really starting to deteriorate because he has cancer. I don't know why I keep looking over here. There's nobody over here. He starts like freaking out and losing his mind, like he's not playing the game, like he's just looking around like, oh, this is where I used to live. And Ji-hoon is like starting to like freak out. He's like, we have to play the game, we have to play something or we're going to die. So then they start playing this game where and Sang-woo and Abdul also play the same game where basically they try to guess if the person is holding, one person holds marbles in their hands and the other person has to guess if either it's an odd or even a number of marbles, and they have to hold marbles in their hand while they guess, and however marbles whatever they guess is, that's what they bet. So if they lose their guess, they have to give the person whatever marbles they had in their hand, and if they won the bet, the person has to give them the equal amount of their marbles, because the whole point is they each get 10 marbles, and whoever ends up with all 20 marbles wins. Now, Sang-woo is losing to Abdul badly until he comes up with the idea to like convince him. He's like, hey, he's like, if we wait long enough, eventually he convinces Abdul that like if it breaks down that by the time they get to the end that there's still a bunch of people still around, that they'll play some sort of team game again. So he convinces him, he's like, go look around and count everybody's marbles. And he's like, but, leave your marbles here. And he does this thing. He's like, I don't want you to lose your marbles. So he basically just tricks Abdul, because Abdul's not that smart. He's very trusting. And he ends up with all the marbles, even though he didn't win a game. He just basically tricks Abdul into giving him his marbles. And then he's like, here, I won. The people, and he gets led away, and Abdul is just left and Abdul looks at his bag and he realizes it's just a bunch of rocks, and he got tricked and he ends up getting killed. So we see that Sang-woo is a real piece of shit. And Sae-byeok and Ji-young play their one hand game, but Ji-young just kind of throws the game because she kind of reveals like she's got nothing to live for, and she likes Sae-byeok, and she wants her to keep going. So she dies for Sae-byeok, which does not sit well with Sae-byeok at all. Ji-hoon and the old man are playing, and Ji-hoon is losing badly. And they became very friendly at first. They agreed to become like good friends. They call each other by a name, like some sort of nickname that, denotes that they're very good friends. And but then the old man starts like saying, like, gets confused, like, what did you say? Like, he keeps forgetting if he said odds or evens, and Ji-hoon like starts saying, he's like, oh no, I said, even, when he actually said odd. And he basically just starts taking advantage of the old man's confusion to get his marbles, and the old man has like one marble left. But then he starts like freaking out and losing his mind again. And Ji-hoon starts like, confronting him. He's like, that's crazy. He's like, we have to play the game. And the old man is like, well, what if we just play for everything? We play one hand and whoever wins gets them all. And he's like, that's crazy. He's like, why would I do that? He's like, well, as crazy as, convincing me, lying to me about what you had said. And he reveals that like, he was kind of playing Ji-hoon to see if he would take advantage of his illness, and then he just gives Ji-hoon his marble and says, he's like, it's fine, you have it. He's like, I want you to have it. And then Ji-hoon walks away, and you just hear the old man get shot in the back. So nobody really walked away from this too well. Everybody was kind of shitty here, and it really is kind of a heartbreaking ending. So now the group is completely cut in half. And you find out that the woman, Minyo, who nobody trusted to be a part of their group, is she just is in the barracks. They just let her away. She was just considered a weak link and just got led back to the barracks. Now it's at this point we find out who's very much behind everything. Or at least we start to get a hint at who's behind everything. There's apparently a host who even the front man answers to, but we never see exactly who that is, at least not until the very end do we find out. But he's some guy who's supposed to be wearing some weird golden owl mask, who's supposed to be joined by a bunch of VIPs, who are a bunch of rich guys who are also wearing golden various animal masks, and now they've come to watch the contest. The host bows out of participating in the viewing at this point. And then during the night, one of the contestants hangs himself because the person who they competed against in marbles was actually their spouse, and so they just can't take it that they are part of this now. So they hung themselves, so that's another person out. So now they're back down to an even number of people. I think they're back just down now to 20. The cop is still sneaking around. He's now disguised as just a server for the VIP people. And so he's like serving drinks to the VIP guys, and then one of the VIP guys starts like hitting on him, and they go to some private room where the cop manages to like get the better of him because the guy asks him to suck his dick, and then he just grabs the guy's balls and then puts a gun to his head and then basically films him and says, tell me everything about what goes on here, and then knocks him out. While that was going on, the other VIPs are watching the fifth game. The fifth game is called Glass Bridge. It's basically a game where you start on one platform and you have to get to the other side of the other platform. Now, before this started... Oh, wait, no. It couldn't be 20, could it? Because now there's only 16 of them left. So I must be off on the numbers, but there's 16 of them left. And basically they then go into this room where there's a bunch of mannequins with like little like number things, like the kind of things you would see in like a race or something almost. And they each have to pick a number from 1 to 16. And nobody's quite sure what to do at first. So Ji-hoon, who can't ever make a decision, ends up with the 16th number, because you're not sure if you want to be first or last in this, but he ends up with number 16, and he's not sure if that's beneficial or not. But in this game, being the dead last is actually a beneficial place. Being last is what you would want to be in this game, because it's one platform and another platform, and then on the other, and then in between are these two bridges that aren't full bridges. They're just little glass panels. Like there's a glass panel, then an open space, then another glass panel, and they're widely elevated. So if you fall, you're falling to your death. And basically, what they reveal is that on both bridges, on the glass panels, the glass panel on each side, one is a panel of reinforced glass that 2 people could stand on. The other is just a flimsy glass that one person will break through. So if you step on one glass, and you'll either fall to your death or you'll live, and then you have to pick. Then you have to decide which one do I go to next? Do I just jump to the one in front of me, or do I jump to the one in front and to the side? And so you just see a bunch of people start falling to their death, and it's just really not good. At one point, one guy freaks out and says like he won't go any further, and Deok-soo just pushes him over to his death. And then Deok-soo ends up the guy in front, but then he says, I won't go any further. If you're going to go, you have to go in front of me. And Minyo comes up and says, she's like, I'll go past you, you coward. And then when she gets up to him on his platform, she then grabs him and then pulls him over, so they both just fall to their death. So that's the end of them. Eventually, there's only 4 people left. It's Sang-woo, Ji-hoon, and Sae-byeok, and some older guy who used to work in a glass factory. So he's like, if I look at the right angle, I could see if the glass is right or not, and he's able to see that. But then when they realize what he's doing, because they have profiles on all these people, they know all their backgrounds, the front man just turns down the lights so he can't see the reflection off the light anymore. He's like, but he could tell with the sound, so he's able to like throw a marble at the fucking glass, because Ji-hoon had a marble on him, and he throws a marble at the glass, and he's like, it makes a sound. He's like, but I gotta hear on the other one, but they don't have anything to throw. So the old guy can't decide, so Sang-woo just pushes him over. So the glass breaks, so they know which way to go now. And so they get to the other side, and then all the glass just, as the timer goes down. At the end of every contest, it seems like Ji-hoon is always coming down to the deadline at every contest. He always seems to come down when there's only seconds left. And when they get to the other side, the timer goes down, and then all the glass breaks, just basically showering them with glass, which cuts Sang-woo and Ji-hoon in the face. But Sae-byeok gets cut in the face, but she also gets a piece of glass just stuck in her side, so she's now just bleeding. After that 5th contest, the 3 of them are then given this really fancy dinner, and at the end of the fancy dinner, they're left with their steak knives. They intentionally leave their steak knives for them. Just like, all right, if anybody wants to kill anybody during the night, now would be the time to do it. Sang-woo and Ji-hoon are not on each other's side, are not friends at this point, because Ji-hoon is not happy with Sang-woo just killing a guy, and Sang-woo is very cold and calculated about it. And so during the night, they're kind of like looking like, you know, which one of them is going to kill the other. Ji-hoon goes up to Sae-byeok and asks her if she's okay, because he could tell that she seems not well. And he's like, we should form an alliance for tomorrow and take him out. And she says, you know, whatever happens, like, promise you'll look after my brother and all this shit. And or whoever wins will take care of the other's family. And then when he realizes that she's bleeding, he starts going to the door, banging on the door, asking for help, saying that somebody needs a doctor. And all of a sudden they do come in, the workers come in, and they come to take her body because she's died. And you look over and you see Sang-woo standing over her. He slit her throat after Ji-hoon tried to go get her help. And earlier in the night, Ji-hoon was gonna go kill Sang-woo, but Sae-byeok stopped him, saying, like, you're not that person. Don't be that person. So now Ji-hoon really wants Sang-woo dead. He's really angry at him. At this point, having gotten all the information he needs, the cop, Jun-ho, he manages to sneak off the island because they have diving equipment. He manages to sneak and he manages to swim to somewhere to the mainland, and he manages to try to call his boss, and he's trying to like send information on his phone, but he can't get a proper signal. And he manages to run to wherever he's going, but he just ends up on another cliffside where he's approached by the front man and his soldiers. And the front man takes off his mask and reveals, surprise, surprise, it's Jun-ho's brother, In-ho. He's been the front man the whole time. And he basically says, you know, give up and I'll ensure that you live. And Jun-ho won't give up, so he actually shoots In-ho in the shoulder. But I think that was before he knew it was his brother. And but since he won't give up, In-ho just shoots Jun-ho, and he falls to his death. So now he's got to deal with the concept that he just killed his brother. This must mean a lot to him because he killed his brother over it. The last game is the title game of the show, Squid Game. Now, Squid Game, I guess, is a Korean game that children used to play in the 80s and 90s. And it's this weird game of having to basically get from one side of this weird shaped court to another. Oddly enough, the court shapes is a makeup of shapes of square, triangles, and circles. And Sang-woo and Ji-hoon are basically, they're not really playing the game because they just start fighting. And they even make it start raining in the room, and they just start beating the crap out of each other. And at first, it seems like Sang-woo might have gotten the better of Ji-hoon, but Ji-hoon gets the better of him, but he refuses to kill him. And just as he's about to go cross to the finish line, that'll get Sang-woo killed. He says, he goes, what if I just agree to not? What if I just agree to stop? He goes, if the both of us agree to stop, this ends the game completely. And that's when Sang-woo says, he's like, don't worry about it. He takes the knife that Ji-hoon left, and he slits his own throat, and he stabs himself in the throat with it. So Ji-hoon wins the game. He wins, 45.6 billion won, which by American dollar equivalent makes him a millionaire. Like it's worth tens of millions of dollars, which is not bad. Especially if you're broke. So he gets sent back. And for a year, he just doesn't touch the money. He doesn't do anything with the money. When he gets home, he finds his mother had died while he was away. And, everybody, he runs into Sang-woo's mother, who asks about him, and he doesn't give her an answer. So he's kind of like distraught about the whole thing, and he's not touching the money. Then one night he gets a woman asks him to buy a flower, and he buys it from her, and attached to the flower is a card, and the card says, from your, I forget whatever the word was that Oh Il Nam said they were, and it gives him a place to meet, and he goes to meet, and he finds Oh Il Nam is in a hospital bed in this weird, secluded skyscraper. And he's just like, that's when Ji-hoon figures it out. He's like, you were behind this all along. Oh Il Nam was the host whose face we never saw. It was him. He was the one behind it, and he participated in the game because he says it's so much more fun to participate than it is to watch. And he's just like, I just remember what it was like to be a kid, to compete in games with your friends. He's like, I wanted to feel that again. And he reveals that the reason that, so he asks Ji-hoon to take another bet with him. They can see this drunk, homeless guy just sort of laying in the street, and it's the winner. And they said, and Oh Il Nam says, if the clock strikes midnight and nobody has come to help this man, I win. If somebody comes to help him, you win. And he goes, Ji-hoon bets, he's like, okay, but if I win, I get to kill you. And Oh Il Nam says, okay, well, what do you bet? And Ji-hoon says, I'll bet anything. He's like, I just want to kill you for this. So they both basically watch for like an hour or so until midnight, just watching this guy on the street and people just passing by, and they talk. And Oh Il Nam basically says, he's like I'm a man who got rich giving out loans. So he's some kind of banker who loans money. He's like, but me and my clients, we all came to this realization that our lives were so privileged that we just got bored with everything. So we needed something to make things interesting. So we decided to so they came up with a game where they made poor people can engage in games against each other for, life or death situations. And he basically argues like, you all came back, you knew what you were getting into, you knew it was worth the risk. I mean, people were willing to kill each other for money. He's like, it's all about money. So basically it's just a commentary on our economic system about how we compete against each other for life or death situations, because that's what the accumulation or lack of ability to accumulate money really does feel like, life or death. Believe me, I know that all too well nowadays. I mean, being a little dramatic in my situation, I'm not like on the street or anything, but it's something that could be very much a reality, if I don't, have a new job soon or anything like that. It's something we all have to think about. And even if you have a job, you could still find yourself economically fucking depressed and in terrible fucking situations. But I digress. just before midnight, somebody comes to help the guy on the street, so Ji-hoon actually wins. And when he looks over, he realizes that Oh-nam is dead, because Oh-nam just wanted to see his friend one more time before he died. So he died because he really did have a brain tumor. Now at that point, Ji-hoon decides he's going to start using the money for good things. First off, he goes and gets a haircut, and he gets a haircut and dyes his hair like bright red. He kind of looks like an idiot, but whatever. Then he goes and finds Sae-byuk's brother, and he basically brings him to Sang-woo's mother to stay with her, and then leaves her with a bunch of money, saying that, this is what I owed Sang-woo. And then he decides that he's going to go see his daughter in the United States. But while he's on the way to the plane to see his daughter, he sees the salesman doing the same competition on the subway platform that they did with him, a year or so before. And he goes to confront the guy, and the guy just sort of waves to him as he's going away on the subway train. And he gets the card from the guy that was competing for the money. Ji-hoon, as he's then getting on a plane, decides to call the number, asking if he wants to compete. And he's like, this is player 4. He's like, this is a... he says who he is, and he's like, I'm not going to let this continue. And then you hear the voice of the front man on the phone. He's like, player 456. He's like, don't do this. Don't get involved. Just get on the plane. Like, I guess they're keeping tabs on him. Just get on the plane and leave and forget all about this. But as he's about to get on the plane, all of a sudden he just stops and turns around, and he's like, no, this is over. I'm going to stop this. And he just starts walking back with the intent, very much with the impression he's going to use all the money he has now, because now he's a rich man. He's going to use those resources to try to end this for good, to try to bring the rest of these people down, because it's just a bunch of rich assholes making poor, desperate people die for their entertainment. It's sick. So that's basically the end of season 1. As to whether there's going to be a season 2 or not, I don't know. That honestly could have just been the end of the whole thing. I don't know what season 2 will look like, but there's a lot to explore, but there's also a lot not to explore. I don't know if it could be as exciting as this season, but who knows? All in all, I thought it was a great show. It was really fantastic. Not even getting into the whole social commentary about wealth disparity and about, the situation of trying to earn money and everything, and how money is just, money is like the cause of and solution to all of life's problems, and it's just a fucking vicious cycle, man. But it was a great show. It was just fun, and not fun's not the word, but it's brutal, and just so tense and just fucking crazy. And it seems crazy in its simplicity, and if you think about it, but it's a good show, and I would highly recommend it. 2 thumbs up. Squid Game, great fucking show. So yeah, that's that. This was a really long review. This might be my longest review yet. Holy shit. Okay. That's that. Good night, folks.